I see why Matt Reeves really wanted to invest in this show because the Batman presented here is not well.
Hi, I'm Shamar Griffith.
And I'm Andrew Tejada. We're going through superhero productions to let you know if they're still fun or the hype around it was dumb on
Cape or Cap, a Black Nerd superhero podcast. Welcome to this week's installment of Cape or Cap, a Black Nerd superhero podcast. My name is Shamar Griffith, codename Comic Shan.
And I'm Andrew Tejada, codename Arate.
Andrew and I have known each other since 1996.
That was the year the Batman Forever arcade game released, and it is absolutely chaotic. If you go on YouTube, you'll see Batman and Robin shrinking and growing. They're unleashing an explosion as a finisher. It's possible to unleash a 150 hit combo to an enemy. You can punch Two-Face in the face, and the tagline is, "The streets of Gotham City are paved with gold." Which they absolutely are not.
No, because the economy of Gotham tells us that it is paved in trash.
Yeah, why would that be the tagline? Gotham and gold? That doesn't relate at all. Like, what?
Also, which face are you punching Two-Face in?
Both of them. I think it's a hate crime. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Double the crime, double the time.
Oh my gosh. I'm glad that Batman Forever is still gonna it's probably like the second worst Batman film from that like Tim Burton era. But I'm also surprised it's the only one that got an arcade game. Because I would have happily played the arcade version of Batman and Robin, especially when they just like grab onto some random like ice skates and try to escape Mr. Freeze.
That would be maybe that's part of the 150 hit combo they were planning for the next one.
Yeah, but then Batman and Robin came out and it was like, nope.
Cut it.
Oh man, but you know what? Do we love Batman?
When it's his time. When it's his time. It's been a
Right.
while. It's been a while since we've done a Batman, I think.
Well, that's because we had to hop over to a whole brand new universe and production company. But we are back, baby. We are back. Of course, we are wrapping up our Run It Back season where we are talking about all the television shows that premiered during the summer of 2024. That included My Adventures with Superman, Suicide Squad Isekai, and as you heard recently last week, Kite Man, Hell Yeah. So wrapping up the summer block of DC shows before, I feel like this was basically them trying to get everything out before they're like, listen, we're going to change the guard. We're having James Gunn run everything. But before we do, we have one other director who was running stuff with Batman. And thankfully today we got Batman Caped Crusader. Gotta say, was not expecting this to ever happen. But then again, it's Batman and we know DC loves Batman. So as soon as they have any production with them, it was automatically going to get greenlit.
Yeah.
This show had 10 episodes in its freshman season. It has a TV Y7 rating, which I was just like,
PG 13 for real.
Yeah. So 10 episodes that all premiered on Amazon. So this was for all of our Max friends who are wondering why they couldn't watch this show. You're just in the wrong streaming service. DC has some things going on that's, there was at one point before this, it was HBO Max. Now it's not. I digress. Because more importantly, we have an incredible showrunner today. The only showrunner for this show, actually, Bruce Timm.
Legend.
Yes. Like there's not much I can say about him because it's like, if you grew up and were molded by the era of Batman, the animated series, to Justice League, like we were, honestly, just give Bruce his flowers. Like, he helped create what was the animated version for a lot of our superheroes, especially on the DC side. If it wasn't for Bruce Timm, we wouldn't even have Harley Quinn because it was a Bruce Timm production on that show. So once again, thank you, Bruce Timm, for creating stories and characters that would span generations of these DC characters. While Bruce Timm was the only showrunner, we did have a pretty extensive executive producer list, which I was Gotta say, pretty shocked to see some of these things. First up, we got J.J. Abrams.
Without lens flares, I don't think.
Right? I don't know if you can animate lens flares, but I'm pretty sure J.J. Abrams will one day figure it out. Next up, after coming out with The Batman, Matt Reeves decides to tie his name as an executive producer to Batman Caped Crusader. So I think we went to go see the Batman in theaters. We watched all almost 3 hours of it. And then we decided to spend even more time watching The Penguin. So if y'all want to hear our thoughts about The Penguin, let us know in the comments. Reach out to us. I will not say much further than that because I don't want to spoil any content for a future episode, possibly. And last but not least, another executive producer we have is James Tucker. James Tucker has worked with Bruce Timm on so many productions, all the way back to the DCAU to even some of the current stuff, definitely running as a animator and a showrunner. And I gotta be honest, one of the best days we probably had early on in our original version of the pod, yet another DC anime podcast, was when James Tucker liked one of our tweets.
That's how we know we made it.
Yep. Yep. So here's an audible thank you to Mr. James Tucker for all that you have done, all that you do, and all that you will do. Especially as a Black animator in the game, we love to chat sometime because as blurs ourselves, we just love seeing ourselves represented in so many different spaces. So this could be a straight up interview, or if you just want to hear us just thank you for hours on end, like we can do that too.
Yes, but don't worry, it will not cloud our judgment. We are coming today open and honest.
Yes.
Tweet us, interview us. But we are also going to be honest about, about every part of the show we loved, including a ghost cameo we absolutely can't wait to rave about.
And speaking of the review, of course, we had to look through the information here. So on Rotten Tomatoes, this show currently has a 94% amongst critics and a 55% amongst the audiences.
That's exactly what we like to see here.
Yes.
Divisive.
And of course, we have to go through the people who helped put this together to see why is it that this show is somehow right down the middle amongst fans and critics. So the cast list is as follows: as we have Hamish Linklater, who is no stranger to the superhero world after voicing Sandman in the Marvel Wastelanders Doom podcast series, and even prior to that, being Leonard in the Fantastic Four with Chris Evans and Clark in Legion.
So good in Legion. He's so good.
Well, in that case, it makes total sense why today he voices our titular Caped Crusader. Next up, Jason Watkins. He doesn't have too much in the superhero production world, but he did have some time with Britain's favorite superhero, I would call him, Doctor Who, in a couple of episodes here and there and a couple of podcast productions. And I think this was my favorite tidbit of his. He has been Gordon Shakespeare in a set of British produced holiday movies called Nativity, which has the sequel Nativity 2, Danger in the Manger, and Nativity 3, Dude, Where's My Donkey?
All right. I'm gonna let you just have that one. I can't take away anything from your dedication to this series.
And of course, speaking of dedication, we have to make sure that he got the voice of Alfred Pennyworth, the man dedicated to Bruce Wayne. All right, Natosa, who a superpowered princess of power in Netflix's recent She-Ra production, trades in her power of energy manipulation for the power of the law as Crystal Joy Brown voices Barbara Gordon. This is also, I think, the first time we've ever seen a Barbara Gordon who is actually practicing like law outside of just like, being the cop.
Yeah, I can't think of one.
I think even back in the day, she was like, when she was first introduced, she was going to law school. So congratulations, Barbara. Thank you for fighting the good fight. All right. Now, this guy, he's got so much voice work that it's hard to pinpoint his time in the Max's Harley Quinn show, The Loud House, Call of Duty, or even the Fallout series. But today, Eric Morgan Stewart is our Commissioner Gordon, which, quick point to say that this is the second time now that Commissioner Gordon and Barbara Gordon are Black presenting characters.
Yeah, and surprisingly, the internet didn't lose its mind. So great, good job, internet, for being normal.
Joining her Fallout voice star, we have Michelle C. Bonilla as Detective Renee Montoya. Also kind of cool to see that Renee is getting her time to shine now, especially as her character in comics has been growing. And of course, you can't have a Batman production without the likes of Diedrich Bader, John DiMaggio, and Gary Anthony Williams, who have all spent their time at some point in the DC world, either as a Batman, as a Joker, or just a random Waylon Jones character type. Today, we have them voicing Harvey Dent, Two-Face, Bullock, and Flass, respectively. Finally, we talked about the three before who have been in countless DC productions, but this person in particular has been in more superhero productions than I've known of everyone else. I think, more times than you've probably seen Stan Lee cameos in the Marvel Universe. Now, we may have had our issue with her performance in a certain very capped version of the Dragon Ball story, but today we're going to see if Jamie Chung can redeem herself as the new voice of Harley Quinn.
Mm. The last person I have to highlight on the voice cast is Cedric Yarborough, playing Rupert Thorne, the gangster, and previously he played Colonel H. Stinkmeaner on the Boondocks. That's where you've heard him from.
Oh my God.
That's why he sounds so familiar, but you can't place it. That's where he's from.
Oh my God. Cedric, thank you. Thank you so much, especially because I know Gary Anthony Williams voices Uncle Ruckus, right?
Yeah.
Oh man. Wow. This is amazing. I did not expect to have a Boondocks reference on this podcast that actually connected to the cast list. This is freaking awesome. If you haven't watched the Boondocks, why are you waiting, people? It is a pinnacle show to our time. If you ever want to understand certain things, man, just watch the Boondocks. And thank you too for coming together for making Cape Crusader. Oh my God, Cedric and Gary together again. It makes so much sense that there was so much hate in this show. All right, with that amazing, lovely, amazing note, let's see if this show earned its actual name or is missing the letter P and start our cape or cap review of the first season of Batman Caped Crusader. Oh, and forgot to mention, of course, as a running back episode, we will not be diving into all the specifics that we usually do with our movies. Instead, we're going to run through and explain how we felt about the story, the characters, fight scenes, animations, and anything in particular that truly stuck out to us within our scenes. So this will be more of our spoiler-filled review, and then you can jump ahead if you wish to our final verdict, where we'll provide a spoiler-free review of the entire series and season, so you can determine whether or not you are interested in watching this show and being a DC fan, because I feel like a lot of people are hopping over as of late.
Oh yeah. Now's a good time to get back in there after Crisis. Anyway, so as this show opens, we always try to figure out where Batman is, where he's relation to Gotham, and this feels more like a year two. Batman's been around a while. People know that Batman is in the shadows, but he and the police still don't really understand each other. Some people still think he's a myth until he's cracking their collarbone. And the first big mystery he has to solve in the show is that around the city, warehouses are blowing up. And they happen to be belonging to a crime boss named Rupert Thorne. So they're trying to figure out who is blowing up these warehouses. On his end, on the other end, in the light side of the law, people who are out there trying to practice. We have Barbara Gordon, who's a lawyer who has a heart of gold, really pulls for her clients. Harvey Dent, not so much a heart of gold. He's a smarmy, really, he'll take bribes to do whatever it takes to win. So they're working the case their own way, and Jim Gordon is just trying to keep his job while serving everyone. So we have a nice a collection of players. And also, if we're wondering, what kind of Batman is this? Is this an ultra realistic Matt Reeves? Is this a far out Batman and Robin? And the answer is somewhere in the middle because the last scene of the first episode has an umbrella cannon.
Somewhere in the multiverse, Michelangelo, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, is just like squealing with joy. And I gotta say, this is where the show shows that it's not going to be your typical Batman story. I think one of the biggest changes that we see is that we get the introduction of the Iceberg Lounge. We get the introduction of all of the mob bosses around who are operating in Gotham. And because we have the Iceberg Lounge, of course, we're going to have the Penguin. And the biggest change here is that Oswald Cobblepot is now Oswalda Cobblepot. I know that this was a big change, and a lot of people were like thinking about this, especially because there was the other Penguin television series that came out around the same time, both of which show some big changes to the original lore and even just the naming conventions of the Penguin. So it was definitely interesting for me to see Penguin now portrayed as a woman because you know what, to me, this definitely worked because this version of the Penguin kept the same demeanor that I've been seeing of the Penguin in this particular year. Like this person who is fantasizing about the old school kind of mob mentality, singing a lot of these like I guess like 1920s and 1940s kinds of songs. So it totally makes sense that this Oswaldo Cobblepot is also singing to the crowd, entertaining the crowd while being this like ruthless person in the background looking to carve out her own stake in Gotham. So what did you think, Andrew? How did you feel about Oswalda Cobblepot?
I was mixed on it. I have no problem. When I first heard the controversy, I thought it was very silly
Mm,
because these are comic book villains. They're reimagined in so many different ways. So I did not mind Penguin being a different gender than the Penguin we're used to. And I
mm,
didn't mind the setup of the episode. The Penguin has kids. She's the lounge singer for the Iceberg Lounge. I didn't mind any of that. But because she doesn't appear after this,
mm,
I was kind of like, to me, if you're going to do something, if you're going to make that big of a change, I mean, absolutely go for it. But I had hoped that she was going to be incorporated more and that it was going to inform her character a little bit more
mm,
because that's where I'm torn. It's like I honestly don't mind it, but I also do wonder in this instance when I saw what the end game was for her, which was set her up as an entertainer that has homicidal tendencies and rules the Iceberg Lounge. At this point, I wonder why not use like somebody like Fish Mooney? Why not use
mm,
another? I know Batman villain roster isn't particularly that deep when it comes to female villains that people recognize outside of Poison Ivy, Catwoman, etc. But I do wonder why specifically they felt the need to turn Penguin do a different gender for Penguin instead of trying to dig deeper into the roster or make an original female villain. So I did wonder that when we got to the end of it. So again, I don't mind it, but I would have liked to see more of it if they were going to make a change that was so sizable to people in the
mm.
fan base. Yeah, that's what I was curious about. Like in the end, why go that route with it?
Yeah. Yeah, especially you're right, especially if it is just as far as we know, I don't know if this show has gotten the season 2 confirmation, but yeah, this is the first and last time we do see this Oswalda Cobblepot. She does a pretty big move and destroys the police station, which doesn't seem to be too much of a factor in later episodes. It
Not at
almost feels
all,
as if,
actually.
yeah, I was like, dude, I feel like they still have the station.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like this might have almost been a proof of concept episode. And
Hmm.
they didn't really, because there are seeds in this episode that continue, but I feel like everything with Penguin doesn't really affect anything going forward, except for the fact that Penguin's being taken down allegedly emboldens Rupert Thorne, who
Hmm.
is a criminal to do more. But again, we don't really see the immediate payoff of that. Instead, the next couple of episodes um kind of focus on one-shot villains and we get more into the episodic nature of the show. We get one on Clayface, which is this really dark psychological murder mystery. We get
And I gotta say, I
yeah.
did enjoy that episode because um, I think that most of my Clayface knowledge has been associated with the Batman, the show with the one that was created by Dwayne Capizzi.
Hmm.
And then after that, it's the Harley Quinn show where it showed kind of like, yes, it was definitely this actor who develops this clay-like state. I think that this particular take on it is a good blend between the two because look, Dwayne Capizzi's the Batman will forever be my favorite version of Clayface because that story and the turn that happens with because it like has a direct connection to Bruce versus this one definitely feeling more villain of the week. But I did enjoy seeing that like if we're gonna lean into the actor route, I need to know how this happened. And it's perfect. It to me, it's like the convoluted steps that were taken in that path were great. So this version of Basil Carlo, I don't know if it's going to possibly influence, especially because, as you mentioned, Matt Reeves was a part of this show. I don't know if this might influence the Batman too, because I believe he's supposed to be a villain in that movie. At least that's the
Yeah.
rumor is. So yeah, I'm interested to see if this is the take that they're going to go with.
Yeah, I know they're developing a Clayface for Gods and Monsters specifically. So there might
Mm-hmm.
be he might appear there instead of Matt Reeves. It depends on how far Matt
Mm.
Reeves wants to go. But yeah, it was an interesting examination. It's followed by a Catwoman episode where they kind of retool things where Catwoman is actually a member of high society that's trying to cling on to her status by stealing, which I thought was a nice shakeup of her origin story. And she also has an Alfred, which is much who is much more bitter and turns on her instantly.
Yeah, this one will definitely draw you a bath, but like we'll paint it. Like
Yeah.
this was just out of spite.
We also have a an episode where the police really try to capture Batman, where they do this great thing where they set up fake crimes around the city and see if Batman will take the bait. Though that was a pretty funny twist on the origin, but to really draw them out, where we get a really big substantial thing, they say you need a costume to catch a costume. So, um, so Harvey Bullock and Mr. Flats himself, the smoothest version of Flats I've ever seen, these two corrupt cops who have been taking bribes since episode one, decide to release what they think is a two-bit villain called Firebug.
Now, this one was, I think this is one of the strongest episodes of this season because of how much it ties into the world of Gotham. We kind of, when you hear of all these heroes, you're thinking of like, oh, okay, like, Superman is saving people in Metropolis, Flash is saving people in Central City. You see all these, like, you're basically seeing a very Metropolis like era, like you're stepping into Manhattan. These are the people who are falling victim. This time in this episode, all of the fighting, all of the process of trying to catch this guy, even Batman working with Jim, they're doing this in what feels like you just stepped foot into like some random residential part of Brooklyn or residential part of the Bronx. Like you're seeing in real time people being affected by these moments. So when things are burning down because Firebug, which I guess is supposed to be a play on Firefly, another Batman villain. Maybe this is like the earliest stages of it. This is when you see that like all these fires and how Batman and Jim are reluctantly having to work together to save the people because like Jim's like, I know this neighborhood. Like this is part of my beat. Like this is part of my old beat. I need to save these people. And Batman jumping in, and you actually see them having a bit more of an appreciation for each other. And then ultimately it turning into like Firebug getting killed by Bullock or Flash, and them in the end being praised as heroes because everybody saw the madman being killed by the police versus Jim, who's just like, listen, you killed someone. Like you set this man loose on these people and ended up harming so many people by destroying their homes, everything. But now you're being praised as heroes that this is a terrible idea. Like, I don't understand how is it that you could be praised for this work. And this is when you kind of start seeing even that dynamic between Batman and Jim to starting to grow because they're like, okay, we have a better understanding. We have a mutual understanding that like we're here to save the people of Gotham. not cause enough chaos to make ourselves look good in the efforts of making it look like we're safe.
Yeah, and their promotion and status as heroes plays in heavily towards the finale. So it's Jim wants to get rid of them, but now he can't because they're hero
Mm-hmm.
cops. Some other one-offs that we see are we get Gentleman Ghosts, by far the most random episode where ghosts are real and he only steals from poor people. And I'm like 90% sure Gentleman Ghost is racist. Um,
Oh no, this man's more racist than Richie's dad in Static Shock, man.
oh yeah, because the way he was acting with Papa Midnight, weird. This is really a weird one-off. I don't really feel the need to
Mm.
go into it more, but it was a weird one.
Yeah,
Um,
mainly for me because it's just like it's a complete tonal shift in the show.
yeah,
Like prior to this, we spent a lot of time with very like these are individuals who are just like they're creating things that it's like concoctions and chemical things that can alter things. Now we're jumping into the supernatural, and it was weird to kind of have that like, hey, here's this like super racist ghost. It's
yeah.
just stealing from people.
I don't really know how he doesn't really advance the story for me. Like a lot of these villains that appear advance the story in one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Gentleman Ghost is the one that I'm like, I don't really see where this goes. So it's
It
an
was just to show
interesting
Dr.
thing.
Midnight's drip, yo. Like,
I guess he had a nice suit. He had a nice white suit. I was like, all right, Dr. Midnight. Harley does show up. We'll get into it later. She deserves more than the
yeah,
quick
just
the quick replay. Um, but the last one off before we get into the real meat and final plot line of the season is Harvey Dent for his mayoral campaign eventually agrees to accept money from the gangster Rupert Thorne, agrees to do some criminal favors, and in exchange, Rupert Thorne supplies money that enables him to do a carnival. And at this carnival, these clever so-and-sos, kids keep going missing. First, a kid named Dickie, then a kid named Jace, then a Steph, a ki and Steffi Brown, and then eventually a Carrie. So if you didn't catch on, those are all Robin names that go missing as orphans, which is a really messed up Easter egg.
also is another crazy Easter egg because it's like done in a very similar way to I think the episode from Batman the Animated Series is called I have like the Batman in the basement thing or something where
Mhm.
I there's like a there's an episode in which a bunch of kids share their stories about Batman. And it's like done at the end of it in a very similar tone when all of them are talking amongst each other. I think I just really like the scene. It's just like if you I'm mad that I can't remember the episode from Batman the animated series, but I love the energy that it gave off, especially because knowing that like each person, like you said, like these cheeky people really put in almost every Robin. But I'm still mad that Tim Drake ain't get no time to shine.
Well, he's not an orphan.
Oh right.
Yeah, neither is
Oh,
Damien. So
mm. Saving him for season two for like let's just go to a parent teacher conference or something.
yeah. So why as these kids go missing, this is the one. Well, I also want to talk about Bruce later and his characterization, but Bruce, all this season has been pretty focused on crime, almost to obsessively. But when he sees these kids missing, he decides to go and look out for them. And while asking questions about did anyone see some little kids to the carnies, everybody jumps him because they think he's Drake and and throw him in a pit. They don't like us. So he ends up unconscious. Meanwhile, people are asking Harvey Dent to take action, but he is so distracted by the corruption going on at his carnival, including an offer to let somebody get off on criminal charges, that he doesn't do anything. And by the time he can take action, it's already way too late. And Batman comes in to save the day, luckily, and solve the mystery, which was all these kids were going missing because um, this one younger girl needs to take the souls from young people in order to survive. So she was draining them. And this was a really standout emotional moment because this girl tries to take Carrie's soul, and Carrie love her. She's the one who fights back. All the other kids kind of fall for the this other kid's charms, but Carrie fights back. And in the process of this wild episode, the evil kid, I forget what her actual name is.
Oh,
Evelyn?
Nocturne.
Nocturne.
Natalia Nocturne or Night, something like that.
Yeah. Natalia, in the process of her trying to get more souls, accidentally injures and mortally wounds her brother. Her brother dies, unfortunately, from his wounds. And at the end of the episode, Batman tells her, and Natalia is ready to just perish in the sunlight because she can't survive in the sun. But Batman covers her with the cape, even though Carrie's like, leave her. Batman says, Batman can't let her go, can't let a child suffer, and covers her with the cape and takes her home. And in a very nice animated touch, Carrie holds on to Batman's cape, the other side of Batman's cape, as they walk back into the light, which I thought was really nice touch. And Harvey Dent, after all this goes down, says, you know what? No more corruption. I'm not taking dirty money. But some people aren't that happy about that.
Yeah, and here's where we get the standard story of Harvey Dent, where unfortunately he gets one of Thorne's people throw some acid at his face. And I gotta say, this was the calmest looking Two-Face I've ever seen in my life. Like it wasn't that bad. Like it was bad, yes, but it compared to what we've seen like with Gotham Knights and The Dark Knight, and even just talking about Tommy Lee Jones and Batman Forever. Like this one, it does send him into a spiral. Unfortunately, it does seem to unlock. I think this was the only one where, like, even though the injury wasn't as severe as past injuries, this was the only one that I think felt like they dived into that psychosis
Mm.
instantly.
Hmm.
Like there were moments throughout, even leading up to it, where you were seeing it build up. I think this is something that I think even resembles how it was done back when Bruce Timm did it for Batman the animated series. I think Bruce Timm does a great job in like this like moment for Dent, where it's like, what is the switch for him from going from the lawyer turned trying to be mayor into like this like individual. And in the aftermath of all this is when Dent loses, basically not only just loses the mayoral bid, but like basically loses his sanity about his securities, about everything. So he's constantly now like having these random outbursts. He gets angry at Bruce. He wants vengeance against Thorne for everything that he's done. So he actually, this was, I think, the most strategic Dent that I've also ever seen, because like the way that he was navigating going through Thorne's men and the compound, it was like he has some military training that I'm just like, I'm gonna need to find some more details
Mm.
about what Dent has done in the past. Unfortunately though, this is a two-part finale, it seems, because during this time when Dent decides he's guilt ridden over everything, he snaps, but he's end up getting taken to Arkham. He which he willingly goes to, and Barbara decides to be his lawyer to try to help him because she knows that Harvey Dent knows all the stuff that happens with Thorne, especially the fact that Bullock and Flass are part of Thorne's crew and taking money off from him. So this whole last episode turns into a really great kind of culmination of the entire season so far, of that how Barbara and is trying to save Harvey alongside with Jim, while Flass and Bullock are tasked with trying to kill him, and Montoya joins in. So it's just like everybody who has been a part of the show and all of this corruption that's been happening in this like almost B plot throughout the entire season, it's finally come to a head, even at the point where um Dent, seeing that Barbara is about to get shot by Flass, he jumps in front of her. And unfortunately, he does succumb to his injuries there. And this is when Batman just absolutely loses it. He's whopping Flass. And when he finally gets a chance, he grabs the gun. And this is when he takes a beat and he's threatening to shoot Flass with it. He's just staring at him, pointed the gun at him, while Barbara is looking too. And ultimately, this is what he just says. it's not worth it, spares him, and decides that, again, the iconic line that we love from the DCAMU: justice, not vengeance.
And the season ends with, Gotham clearly rocked from this, but on the bright side, Batman has established a rapport with the GCPD.
Mm-hmm.
Presumably after this, Flash will probably be placed on leave for shooting Harvey Dent in the back. Um,
We know how
so
we're gonna go paid leave.
yeah, paid leave. And Batman sends a batarang at Thorne's face, letting him know, you got away with this one. Good on you, champ. But next time, it might go a little different. So that's basically, in a nutshell, the fast forwarded version of the story of the first season. Now, getting into characterization, I think first it's worth talking about the man, the myth himself, Batman. I see why Matt Reeves really wanted to invest in this show because the Batman presented here is not well. It's similarly to Robert Pattinson's take on the character. This Batman is trapped in an obsession that controls him more
Mm-hmm.
than he controls it. And there's so many great little moments in this. Two I want to highlight, especially about his Batman character, are when they replay parts of his origin story, where he's a kid, he's lying awake at night thinking about what happened to his parents, and at one point he gets up and goes to Alfred's room. And you think this is gonna be one of those scenes where he's like, Alfred, can I just spend the night with you? Can is it okay if I stay in here? And little Bruce stands at the door and says, we're gonna make them pay, and you're going to help me. And in this moment, you're like, is this a serial killer like emerging?
Right now, if my child ever did this to me, I'd be like, no, we're going to Toys R Us to talk about this right now.
You need therapy stat. Um, so that was a great intro to like how twisted his psyche became. And one thing they play with really effectively in the last couple of episodes is he takes Harvey out after Harvey's accident.
Mm-hmm.
And he shows up as Bruce. So you're thinking this is a genuine concern, like this is Bruce being real. But Bruce only takes Harvey out to get the identity of the person who does it. It's still Batman.
Yep.
It's still the case. And Harvey starts to see it, but it culminates in a moment where Harvey is in Arkham and Bruce is trying to like play nice. But there's one point where Bruce switches his Bruce voice into his Batman voice and says, I know you saw something. Don't grow a conscience, Dent. And Dent catches him.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this hint that they do of that Batman is a split personality of sorts. They don't go all the way and say it's a completely separate identity, but they do throw in those shades of it. So at the end of the season, when Batman turns to Alfred and says, that could be me. I could be
Yeah.
Two-Face. And Alfred has to reassure him that he still has his humanity. So I really this what they do with Batman roundabout arc, I think is beautiful for this first season.
And I'll also even say that comes up in even some smaller moments. One, the entire time that you were watching this show, you were hearing Bruce as Batman, or even just as Bruce himself, talk to Alfred. There's a clear line between the two of them. It is not a friendship, not in the past, we've seen it as like, this is a confidant, this is my guardian who I've grown with, who I know he trusts me. Here, it's like the even to the bare minimum that Batman and Bruce only refers to Alfred as Pennyworth. The entire series, he only refers to him as Pennyworth up until the last episode when they have this conversation about how Bruce does have some parts of his humanity still left. And this is when Bruce catches himself and in the Batman costume and says, Alfred. And this is when you know that like it finally broke through, that he's finally letting people in. And this is actually even stemming from a conversation back when we first learn about Harley Quinn, who does have a great origin story in this one. It doesn't dive into as much as we have seen in the past, where she was a therapist or a psychiatrist who was working alongside Joker. Here, she is just working with everybody in Gotham. She is good friends with Barbara. She is a paramour of Renee Montoya. And the two of them end up having a conversation, and she calls Bruce out for something in particular about this sense that she's feeling like she's not talking to the real Bruce. And this is the episode where we do kind of dive into the origin of Bruce. And as they're talking, you get this sense that she is even seeing and understanding the duality that Bruce has with Batman. And she comments that she doesn't really know who she's talking to, because it does feel as if he is putting up that front, the constant front of the playboy billionaire philanthropist. And, or I guess, take away the philanthropy. I don't know if he was actually giving away money in this show.
Oh, I think he did mention he donated a lot to orphanages
Okay. Oh
in the
yeah,
Dr.
yeah, yeah.
Tompkins
Oh
episode.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So philanthropist, yes. So it was. I think here you're right. Like, this characterization of Bruce is definitely someone that has this split. Like, it definitely has been, I feel like it's been joked about in the past. Like, I think of Batman Beyond, where Terry had asked Bruce, like, how did he know he was being mind controlled? And he was like, I don't refer to myself as Bruce in my head. So, those hints that we had in the past, now it seems like we're taking the fun aspects of it. And this show was just like, let's add in the psychological conversational aspects of it. So I think this characterization of Bruce, I definitely agree with you. I can see why Matt Reeves wanted to tack on to this. It is a well done Bruce, especially because it's a good balance between not having this like super aggro version that we have seen as of late pop up in Dawn of Justice and then that be the narrative. And now it's just like, here's the complicated individual who is in the early stages of himself, and we don't know exactly where he is on the teetering side of his psychosis.
Yeah. And speaking of psychosis, put it off long enough. We got to talk about Harley Quinn.
Yes.
Um, Harley Quinn, as you said, is imagined as not tied to the Joker in this version. She is friends with Barbara Gordon and Renee Montoya, who are all around the same age in this version of the story. And they're all friends. And she is even becomes Bruce's psychologist after he punches somebody for commenting on his mom's pearls, which I thought was a nice touch. So at first she's presented as this psychologist who can outwit Batman, but nothing really sinister about her. But then you find out that some of her clients have gone missing, and we get this one of the most twisted scenes I think I've seen in a Batman, certainly from Harley, where she has her Harley's MO in this story is to take the patients she has, these rich, overprivileged patients who are weeping about problems or even confessing to crimes, and she takes them, traps them in a basement, and twists their psyche so much that they're entirely dependent on her and getting her approval and signing away their possessions. They'll do whatever they want for Harley Quinn. And there is a point where she brings in a new client and everyone's dressed in these ridiculous get-ups and baby costumes and all these childish costumes. And she gets this one person who is dressed in this king's outfit. And he's refusing to sign away his possessions to listen to Harley. But then she turns to another one of her clients and says, "You in the baby costume, do you want dessert today?" He's like, "Yeah, I want to eat dessert without having to eat my vegetables." We all get it. Um, and gives him a sledgehammer and says, "You get the king to give up his earthly possessions and you get dessert." And he's freed from a cage he's in. He could attack Harley with this
Mm-hmm.
hammer, but instead he obeys her and goes and attacks the other man instead. So this Harley is a master manipulator, a psychological expert. She can read steps, 2 steps ahead, and it leads to Batman going into the mansion to try to stop her and save these people. And Barbara Gordon is also there following the trail. And Barbara has this horrifying realization that one of her best friends in the world is this criminal and has to choose between saving Batman at one point and leaving with Harley. And she does
Mm-hmm.
choose to save Batman. I mean, and Harley also has to leave Montoya hanging in
Yeah.
the middle of this romantic plot line, saying she has to get out of town. And presumably off screen, Montoya would have learned of what Harley did, but we don't see our reaction to it.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to see that one day, though, to see what she
Yes.
thinks of Harley now.
Yeah, because this was a great version of Harley Quinn, in my opinion, because it this show just really does a great job in this like just like the dual differences of the mind when it comes to certain characters. Because this version of Harley, it seems like she definitely kept this whole side of this master manipulator separate from this person who seemed to be so love struck with Renee Montoya. So seeing that like this loving relationship was about to get built and then it's just like immediately taken away from you within 20 minutes, it is. And the fact also you feel connected to seeing how this relationship grows. That right there to me is just a great way of combining and introducing characters and putting together this story, because it's showing that Harley finally became, sorry, let me take that back, because she's always been an amazing character, but more so finally became showing her that she's an amazing character outside of having her origin be connected to the Joker, which it is alluded to in the end of the season that he may be coming. There was like a scene, a post-credit scene in which some people were laughing uncontrollably. It was seemed to be dealing with like someone people administering Joker toxin based off our knowledge of DC stuff. But to see that this version of Harley happened, especially because the mindset that plays out here is a lot similar to that of the Hugo Strange character in the Batman storytelling. And this person who is a really big adversary for Batman, because it's more so the psychosis of Batman and Bruce Wayne versus like this is just a punch him up with a man who knows like 50,000 ways of fighting. Now you have it be that like Harley Quinn, while she doesn't know that Bruce is Batman, she does know Bruce's mind. So to know that like this could be a potential threat for him in the future, because I'm pretty sure she's going to be able to put two and two together. She was smart enough to keep both of these lives separate for so long and to manipulate Gotham's riches. Like this is, I feel like the people who are like tax the rich. This is your champion right here. So I gotta say, loved Harley Quinn. Love this version of her. Definitely am looking forward to seeing more. So I'm glad that even though it looked like she died off screen, it is looking like she is going to come back,
Oh no, she
especially
didn't die. Sorry.
oh, it was like no, my bad. I couldn't remember. I knew she fell, but then it was just always that like she fell from a height that was like no one should survive that. And
Oh
then she
no, but
does. Yeah,
she
you're right.
the
She does a
phone
call,
call. Yeah.
phone call. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're right. You're right. My bad, y'all. Let me not. Harley's coming back. It's like a Marvel movie. Harley will return.
That was on the screen. The last the last people I want to highlight respectively are Flash and Dent. I mean,
Mm,
Flash and Bullock, the corrupt cops. Because again, you when you've seen as much Batman media as we have, you're kind of used to like, okay, Bullock's gonna be the slimy guy. Flash is usually slimy, but they don't usually use him that much. But they are such an effective duo
mm-hmm.
because Flash is this smooth talking dude who's like, all right, oh, it's a shame that Firebug has the trunk is open right now. And it's a shame we got engine trouble in this car we're carrying Firebug in. And Bullock
Talks
is
just
just,
like that, people. Like
yeah,
just
the
like
whole
that.
show.
Andrew actually did the voice work.
So smooth, yeah. But and Bullock is just as heavy. He's just muscle.
Mhm.
And there's this fascinating dynamic between the two of them where Bullock, when he shoots Firebug in that episode, he's not happy about it. But he did it because, Flash is encouraging him to do it, but Flash doesn't actually have to bloody his hands with it.
Yeah.
So eventually, in the Two-Face episode, when he's really running around as Two-Face and they're about to dispose of Two-Face, Two-Face mentions, Bullock, how many times have you just done what Flash told you to do? How many times have
Mm.
you taken out the garbage for this man? And who, because he's in charge here. And though he only puts a little crack in their relationship, you see it. You see it on Bullock's face when he's responding, when he's like, has the chance to take out Barbara Gordon, but kind of holds back. You see it. So it's this fascinating thing where Flash is the more sinister of the two, but Bullock keeps falling into the trap of
Yeah.
doing things for him. I think that's a really fascinating dynamic.
Yeah, especially because Bullock, from history, isn't usually the guy who ends up in this position. Like in the beginning, he does end up being like a cop on the take. But once you see him operate with Jim, it's like a completely different character. Like um Bullock for me was always kind of like the Bulk and Skull from Power Rangers. It was like, yeah, they're gonna get into some weird antic stuff that seems kind of like not necessarily villainous or nefarious, but more just like evil comical, like Lex Luthor stealing cakes. So, but to see in this series him make that shift to being truly acting like a cop on the take, but still having this moment where it's just like there's a potential for a redemption from him. I loved this dynamic that they had. Flash agreed. Smoothest talking crooked cop I've ever seen in my entire life. The only man in Gotham to walk around in a bow tie. Like, how is that not dirty? Like, I'm impressed. I am 100% impressed. I love this version of Flash, especially because we've always seen like the more the guy who's always like drunk and stumbling. Like this seemed like a very well put together Flash. I loved it. I love this version. I love seeing that you had these two cops on the take who are just like manipulating things in the background, but still raising up in the ranks. And I gotta say, that especially agree with that scene of Dent calling out Flash for what he did and making sure that Bullock knows that, like, hey, you're basically the one doing all the stuff because Flash got real close a couple times. He almost shot Catwoman dead to rights, but if it wasn't for that scene, the one time we actually saw him get dirty and kill Dent was the only time that we did see him. And thankfully he was stopped right then and there. But I would be interested to see if I wouldn't be surprised to see rather if this is probably like one of the last versions times that we see Flash, and then they kind of pivot towards a Bullock redemption by season 2, or maybe hopefully if the season gets like a season 3 or something. I definitely want to see how that plays out. I definitely want to see these two come back because
Mhm.
again, was not expecting two characters who are usually side characters who never really get that much speaking lines. Like Bullock, the most I saw him speak was either in Batman the Animated Series or Fox's The Gotham.
Mhm.
That was it. And now you made another version of Bullock that has drawn me in. I definitely can't wait to see more of them.
Yeah. And talked about standout characters. Now just things that stand out in general. Just are good or bad. Um, one quick thing I have to mention. There's an episode where there's a crew of assassins that comes to get Gordon, and when they get off the train, they just stand together like an album cover. Like
Word
it,
so hard.
it was like we're gonna kill people, but first we gotta pose, we gotta get this.
Straight out of Gotham.
Yeah. So I love that. There's a great line I have to take time to highlight where um Alfred, after Bruce finishes his required therapy sessions, he's like, "Are you sure therapy didn't work? Because I kind of wanted you to keep doing that." And Bruce shakes him off. So I'm glad. They also acknowledge that he tried to put him into therapy much earlier, but didn't
Mhm.
take. So I am very glad there's a version where Alfred is like, "Yeah, I tried. I did try."
Yeah, I think also I loved Alfred in this one because one scene in particular that stuck out to my mind was we always hear of the Batman origin story, or rather Bruce's origin story into becoming Batman of dealing with the death of his parents. It's always walking down crime alley, the pearls, the shots, the dedication to justice, not vengeance. This time around, we see that Alfred was actually nearby. He is their chauffeur. So he hears the gunshots and immediately runs out. It's the closing scene on one of the episodes. And no words are said, but as I was watching it, I was just like, I've never actively thought about Alfred being there. Every single time that you hear this story, it's like Alfred met up with them later on. He was probably called in. Even every version that I've seen from the Tim Burton stuff to even just like thinking about Gotham and even the Batman, it's always that Alfred ran over afterwards while being at Wayne Manor. This is the first time where we're now hearing that Alfred was present really for the moment. And it made me wonder, like, hey, like what was going through his mind when he saw that, like, granted they were his bosses, but I'm pretty sure that they were also his friends, given the fact that he's now the guardian of their child. So what happened to Alfred in that moment when he ran up and saw that these two people who were close to him were dead on the ground and that the only surviving person was their child? So, and also, what he seemed to keep it together, but like what happened after the fact? Like what were made me think about what were stuff that he probably experienced himself. Like when Bruce came up to him, was just like, we're gonna make them pay, and he's like, yes, we're gonna put you in therapy and whatnot. Did he have his moments of grief? Did he have moments in which he went to therapy and talked about the fact that, he was right there? He, not saying that not only could it have been him, but maybe he could have been with them and helped to stop it. Maybe he could have been the one sacrifice himself even, and not have this child deal with the fact that he lost his parents right in front of his eyes. So I love the fact that they added this because it creates a whole new narrative that I would love to see more of. And the fact that it was just him running towards the danger, that opens up this large possibility of what else can we learn of how did Alfred Pennyworth tackle the loss of his, I'm going to call it, his friends.
Yeah, Alfred is always walking on eggshells around this
Mm-hmm.
Batman. And yeah, maybe it stems from that moment where he feels he failed him. Um, you know, and just permits everything because he just doesn't know how to help him cope.
Yeah.
Um, Another highlight after Harvey Dent becomes Two-Face, the camera, the angles are very extremely careful to maximize when his good side's in the mirror, and the
Mm-hmm.
good side, not what you're thinking about physical, because sometimes they use the scarred part of his face to represent his good nature, but they do so much with the duality, with the turning, the framing of shots after he becomes Two-Face are extremely careful and extremely well done. So I do want to highlight the animators for that. My favorite joke in the show, I also have to highlight, where while Batman is investigating the Penguin on a boat, he has to dive into the water. So he comes out of the water, and Barbara Gordon is there, and he makes a dumb joke about, it's not a party until someone falls overboard. And Barbara Gordon's like, why are you being weird? That's not funny. What happened to you? He goes up to another group, immediately makes the same joke, and they all laugh. Like, it's a great of like him keeping up this fake persona no matter what. I love that. It's so good.
Yeah. And also it just feels very natural that this is the thing that, like, we did say that this feels like a year two kind of Batman. So you wonder now, it's just like, is this him kind of truly diving into his Playboy persona, trying to play off these things? And yes, 100% yes. Especially because there is one scene in particular where his Playboy persona gets put into serious question. We did mention it because it is such a great episode because of the fact of the back and forth that they had. But this Harley Quinn and Bruce Wayne conversation while he's in therapy, she asks him all these questions, but the thing that stuck out the most was, hey, how are you dealing with relationships? And he's just like, have you seen the paper? I'm on a new day. I have a new person on my arm every time. And then she hits him with the, well, does it seem to be like you're having many second dates?
Hmm.
And I gotta say, I feel like from the history of Batman, Bruce Wayne definitely took that personally, channeled his MJ, and decided to pull the roster of Selena Kyle, Vicky Vale, Silver St. Cloud. The list goes on and on, people, of multiple dates that he will go on for these people. I feel like it just all stems from this one conversation. This is why Bruce Wayne has like his roster is kind of wild after that.
This is his villain origin story. Um, Yeah, and I want to say quick note in case people have, remember this from Killing Joke and had this question, because somebody also had this question when I mentioned Barbara Gordon was the same age as Bruce. They're like, do they do something romantic? No.
No.
And I love that.
Yes.
The series leaves it very ambiguous because at one point I also thought Barbara might hook up with Renee Montoya. I thought they were
Mm.
going that way. Not forcing anything here. That was might have just been subtext I picked up on that wasn't actually intended. But Barbara is focused on her legal career, her friends, and her family. She does not have time for romance in this version. But that said, if they did decide to go that route because of her frayed relationship with Batman, where she kind of accepts him and kind of now at one point he does the appearing and she's like, yo, do you ever use a door? Like, I feel like she's getting more comfortable with him. If this went romantic, I would not hate it because I trust these writers to get us there in a way that makes sense. But I'm
Hmm.
also fine with it never, ever, ever happening in any form of media ever again. So I do, I do like Barbara as a character. I do like that they did not feel like they needed to force them together, and they just came together organically throughout the show.
Yeah. You know, it's always been Batman and Jim, so it's kind of nice to see that Batman and Barbara get a chance to have this relationship of let's work towards like if it turns romantic or even if it just sticks to the let's work on fixing Gotham because it does work. Like this is the same dynamic that we've known for a while. This does work of the vigilante and the law enforcement, whether it be a lawyer or a legal litigator reluctantly having to work together for the greater cause. And it works, it definitely works. The last thing I did want to point out is that if you're ever feeling in this show, you don't know what time period you're in, while they don't say what year it is, you definitely get a strong noir vibe. And I think it is perfect for this show. um, usually it's always in most Batman productions, you don't know which way they're gonna lean. Um, Especially because sometimes they want to make it futuristic because you want to give, it's the marketing for the toys later on in the future. Or you want to make it just like seem kind of cool and edgy for like the older fan base who is just like we're stuck of seeing Batman in the past. Here it is clear that Batman is definitely a noir production of like these like 20s to 40s kind of like private detectives. You could definitely imagine hearing the jazz backgrounds music with like the detective or the private eye swishing around with their glass of like two knuckles worth of whiskey or something like that. This show captures that even with the placement of fog in certain scenes. This show does a great job in just leaning into the time period it is in with not specifically saying what year it takes place. And even the way they show Batman, Batman is shown in his very classic more attire. The only thing that was missing from this, from being a true like early stage Batman production, and this is just for like the people who have a crazy level of detail, i.e., myself, you could have actually given Batman the purple gloves in this one, and it would still totally have worked. It would 100% work.
Yeah, so now we come to the end of it. Where do we stand at taking the aesthetic, the characterizations, the racist gentleman ghost? After seeing all of that, did Batman earn his cape this time, or should he just rip off those bat ears and put on a big black cap for this one?
I gotta say that this show, in my opinion, definitely earned its cape. This is truly a caped Crusader, in my opinion, because it did the one thing that I have been demanding of Batman productions in the last couple of years. I'm tired of seeing him work alongside it's just a Batman focused thing where it's just like a punch him up with whatever villain of the week thing it is. And granted, it was built out like that, but this time around, they had such a compelling backstory of the world of Gotham in the background. So Batman, in comparison to a whole bunch of other stuff, I feel like him in the costume doesn't pop up as much as we think as compared to other productions, which I thought was a great choice because if you are going to be talking about how all these things interact, especially if the focus is going to be the world of Gotham and the people operating it, the Renee Montoya's, the Barbara Gordons, how they're working alongside Batman. I wanted to see how they came to the same conclusions that Batman got to, because obviously we know that Batman's going to get there. He's a great detective, but he doesn't. In comparison to his detective skills, in comparison to the regular beat cop, it's going to be far superior. But like seeing the steps that Renee Montoya and Barbara Gordon had to take, even team working with Harley Quinn to have this like forensic psychology breakdown of Batman when they were building out that task force, it showed me that the world of Gotham has a lot of stories still to tell. And we don't need to have it be that every single person can only be a side character to Batman. Batman, it felt like in a lot of these stories, was the side character, which is funny because the whole show is named after him. So I really appreciated the fact that we had this. The only thing that I did have some reservations about is that the show does jump in tone quite frequently. We spent majority of the first half of the season, I think it was up until episode 6, it is a very much like, this can happen, I can see this happening in my own even everyday life. Like, first episode, there's definitely probably some crime boss who, granted it's an umbrella cannon, but that's not the most absurd weapon I ever heard of. um or even like a psychiatrist who's probably manipulating or using some, I don't know, using something to manipulate people that she is talking to. Like, those are things that we've heard about, we've seen about in the news. But as soon as they jumped into the racist gentleman ghost and kind of had no explanation about the supernatural world of Gotham, because they even jumped into Nocturne and how she was able to absorb the energy from these kids. Like, those two episodes definitely, while the Nocturne episode is great because of that Easter egg of the orphans being Robins, and then that end sequence of Batman deciding to save the girl while also being held onto by another kid. It's a great scene. It just feels so out of place from a world where it's like everything seems to be told within a realistic setting. So if we were going to dive into that, I would need some explanation from the show as to how this is even possible in this. Because again, this is a year 2 Batman. There's no way that I would expect for him to fight against a ghost, and a racist one at that. I feel like he uses the vigilante with the hard R. But what about you? How are you feeling about, is this caped or capped Crusader?
I think this is the Caped Crusader back at it. This show, where it really excels, is the psychological exploration. It's exactly what I came here for. I wanted those deep dives of Batman villains that I remember in episodes like Baby Doll from the original. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted those deep dives, and it did not disappoint. Clayface, even though we glanced over really quick, um, there's a point in the episode where someone's like, he's the greatest actor of all time. He just didn't have the face for it.
Mm.
And how they mentioned that followed him around for decades. And then he got a chance to get this experimental serum that allows him to change his face. And that sparks his, spree. It's just this constant being told that he isn't the right person for the part. And he ends up not committing his last kill because the actress he captures says, I don't believe you. I don't believe you're committed to being the villain.
Mm.
And that hesitation saves her life and even saves Barbara Gordon's life because they're both kidnapped at the time. So the deep psych evaluations for him, for Firebug, Harley's motivations, I love so much, and there's still room to go and see how she became that way. I love those so much. So I think if I can offer why this show might be divisive among fans, but critics love it, I think it's because those episodes are so strong. I think when they
Mm.
focus on the individual takes, the self-contained stories, Those are the absolute strongest episodes of the series. The Harley episode is fantastic. The Clayface episode is fantastic. For even though it's really out of tone, I did enjoy the Natalia episode as well because it delves into this child's psyche and her inability to understand consequences because she was trying to survive. So I do like those. But I think what happens throughout these episodes is we get taken into this Rupert Thorne, Harvey Dent, Barbara Gordon Jim plot that isn't as interesting as what's going on in that particular episode. And they never took the focus away completely, but there would be scenes and moments where it's like, I really want to see what Firebug is getting into right now
Yeah.
more than I want to hear about Harvey Dent's mayoral campaign. So I do think, unfortunately, and there's no easy solution to this of, they had a running story throughout the whole season, but um also they had these individual self-contained. And I do appreciate it because it gave a building sense. But I do think that if there was an RTA alteration to be made here, is that they've narrowed the scope a little bit because you had Jim Gordon, you had Barbara Gordon, all Renee Montoya. I think if you narrowed the scope a little to Jim Montoya and Harvey Dent, tied them
Hmm.
together a little bit closely. Barbara, of course, too, tied them together much closer so that every other scene that wasn't the main was focused on them completely. I think it would have been an easier thing to accept each episode, especially for more Harvey. While we got to see his smarmy, dirty side,
Yeah.
this was a time rarely where we didn't see his real rageful side a lot before the end. Um, so I think I would have liked to see a little bit more of a hint of that, just a tiny bit, not much more than they did, but that would have been nice to see a little bit more. But I do think the other elements are fantastic. I think the build, especially Batman's efforts to work with the police, that build is gorgeous. I think he had to. I have never seen a Batman work so hard to ally with the cops. They really make him go on a run for his money this season. And they still don't fully trust him or give the green light to him. There's a
Hmm.
hilarious line where he's like, I need to connect with you, Barbara. Here's my phone number. And she's like, oh, phone number. I'm surprised you're not just shining a light through the window. It's like it's a really great interaction between them. So I do think that I would hope going forward, I love a good running plot line, but I think put it in the back burner a little bit and focus on those one-offs
Hmm.
because I think ultimately all of this to say I think the reason there's a split among fans is because I think people coming for one-offs are feeling a little distracted and then the
Yeah.
people coming for a long plot line are unsatisfied by the one-offs. So I think we a choice needs to be made and I think Batman animated series, the 2004 Batman series did this well, where yes, there are everything is villain of the week, but there are things that are advancing in the background, but they're
Yeah.
always very low priority. So I hope they take those notes and really hit these deep dives that they're doing so well at that I loved in the next season. And have that running plot line way in the background and no more Ghost. No more. I don't want to see Gentleman Ghost again. I appreciate the callback. I'm sure someone loves him. I'm not one of them. Never want to see that guy again.
He should be
Exorcise him.
canceled.
Cancel him.
I also want to see more of this, like the random interactions of Bruce or Batman inside GCPD. I think there is a scene in particular in which Jim kind of just like happens on him and then like this whole it turns into this whole big thing. And I thought that was just a masterclass of just like weirdly enough comedic timing for what I didn't expect for an interaction between Jim Gordon and Batman that only pales in comparison to when Robert Pattinson's Batman punched Jeffrey Wright's Jim Gordon in the face. But yeah, that is our full Cape or Cap review of Batman the Caped Crusader. Ultimate verdict. It looks like this is a show that definitely earned the caped part of its name, so you should definitely check it out.
I was just gonna say, if you have skipped all the spoilers, in general, I'd say if you saw Batman the animated series growing up, or you were into the 2004 Batman, but are looking for something a little bit more psychological,
Hmm.
a little bit darker than what you've seen in those shows, with a tinge more realism, not completely realistic. There are some elements in the show that are not realistic, as you'll find out.
Hmm.
This is a good this is a good springboard. It is a really nice callback to the old, but it does do some new things, and it will absolutely be a contrast to any other like bright and happy superhero show you're seeing right now. This is a definite contrast, and it's a real quick watch, so definitely recommend giving it a shot if you like those old Batman animated series, but you're ready for something a little bit more bite, a little bit sharper, a little bit darker. This is for
Hmm.
you.
And I will say too that like if you are a parent who probably wants to introduce your kid to Batman in this particular sense, I'd probably say this isn't the while this isn't the best one for them. Um Andrew here is just like, nah, we're gonna cut that out real quick.
No, don't do it. This
Don't do
it
this
says
one.
TVY7, but I wouldn't. Bring that rating up a little bit.
Yes, definitely. So, fortunately for you though, there are still many classic episodes of the Batman, either in the 2004 Batman, the series that we talked about, or even Batman the animated series, which granted was a little bit dark at times, but this is still those are still some great ones. This is definitely one for you tuck the kids away, you popped open your whiskey, and you just want to watch some good noir Batman storytelling. This is a great one. Very glad that this came about because we definitely was worried about it, especially because it's like, hey, we have had so much Batman. It's a lot of Batman fatigue, but thankfully this keeps the energy going versus like anything else that we would have expected from it.
Hmm. And before we adjourn here, I have a surprise new thing. I think every time we cover Batman, we need to do this. This is
Mhm.
completely surprise. I have not briefed my co-hosts on this whatsoever. But the question is, for this show, does Batman kill people? The answer right now. Does Batman kill people in this show?
Okay, so there was three people who got hit by a car really hard
Yep.
in this show. I did think about this. I'm mad I didn't put this in my notes because I was just like, you know what? Maybe they got back up. But let's just say that Batman gives the nod, and I don't know if they nodded back.
Yeah, I mean, there was one person I was willing to give the benefit of the doubt because there's one point where Two-Face lights somebody on fire and Batman does not attempt to save them. I think it's implied it's too late, but also I'm like, you kind of let that one die, but I was gonna let that one go. The one person, there's three people though, I think are definitely dead. In the final fog scene, he jumps in between two people who are shooting at him and they shoot at each other. I think they're dead.
Oh,
Um,
right.
and again, you can say indirect. The one you can't, though, there's a person Batman knocks out and then throws in the water. That person, 99% sure they drowned and died. 99% sure. They were unconscious in the water.
Yeah, that also answers our question. It's like, should I watch this with my kid? No.
3 to 6 is his kill count. 3 to 6.
3 to 6 is a pretty wide. It's three too many. I really thought it was just the people he hit with his car.
This Batman never said he doesn't kill people.
That's true. This might have been the moment. This might have been his like, what was it, like his like, you know what? I'm better than this, but Flash, your bow tie was too cool. I'm gonna let this slide.
I can't kill a black man to be a hate crime.
Barbara and Joe would have been looking like, mm.
So this the real Batman, huh?
Oh man. With that wraps up our episode. Glad to know that there's something out there for Batman to keep on doing. Very much looking forward to what happens if we do get a season 2. Join us next time on the show, as while we have completed our Run It Back summer series, we of course still have a bunch of superhero productions that are going to be happening close to the end of this year, or have even happened throughout the year. So stay tuned for an announcement.
Ooh.
All right, so with that wraps up our show. Thank you again for listening to our Run It Back summer watch list. Be sure to support us either through a one-time gift on Buy Me a Coffee or monthly through Patreon. You always check us out for our socials for updates on episodes or other announcements that you can always find across Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and many other platforms. If you ever want to reach out to us, of course, our DMs are open. Just slide right in. That sounded weird. But you can also email us at capeorcappod@gmail.com. Take care of yourselves, and remember that if you ever have an ancestor who pops up as a ghost that decides they're going to try to, steal and reclaim your family's honor, you might need to have a conversation with them first about the usage of an A versus an ER at the end of certain words.
And if you're at a carnival and someone asks you to go behind and check the tents and, secret place behind the tents, I think you should know not to go. But it's a reminder, don't go. Don't go there behind the tents. You will end up dead.
Thanks again for listening. If you liked what you heard, press that follow button and share us with a friend. And don't forget, you can always see more updates and content on our social media accounts just by searching @Cape or Cap.